Hey everyone, this is the Kubeflow graduation slash community call, but mostly graduation call for the 20th of May, 2025. This is not the second one. I think this is the third one, but we'll just, I'm just gonna say this is. Cool. So obviously the goal of the call and these calls in general is to get Kubeflow to the point where it can be a CNCF graduated project and everything that that means. Obviously, there's lots of work going on for many different pieces of the project, but this is specifically about graduation, which is more of a well, there is some actual work to do as well. It's not just a kind of a review. There is some actual stuff we need to change, but I think we've got a couple of people who unfortunately aren't able to make it today, so we're going to try and keep this meeting short so that they can watch it and just kind of overview with George, who's from the CNCF, what the current status is and what we need to do next so we can make sure that stuff is happening. George, do you want to give us an overview?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how to paste into this doc.
Okay, so if you've just joined Kubeflow Discuss,
I did.
also just for people who reference, I mean, I don't want to say it on the recording sometimes, but if you don't know how to add, like everyone should have suggestions.
Okay.
Whoever, whatever your Google account is on the top right, you need to join Kubeflow Discuss on that, which means going here and joining it. Well, I'm already in it, so I can't join it, but yes. Cool. So I will. So I guess I will quickly just overview. There is a tracking issue, although I'm not sure that this is the correct tracking issue anymore. Have we made a new one? Is that correct?
Yeah. So, all right, Matthew, if you wouldn't mind handling those URLs, I will explain the URLs. It's probably
Sounds good.
that way we don't have to mess around with this for too long.
I've got them both open.
So the original issue is from October 2023, and the process or whatever is all updated. So I had a meeting with Francisco and a few other folks on Monday where Bob from the CNCF, he's on my team. I was like, I need you to list every single step that we have to do for graduation and only that. So we got a fresh list. So figured it would be better to create a whole new issue.
Do you want me to just close this one and point that one to that one then?
We could. I think
so that you can edit. I want you to manage this. I think you know what I mean. I mean, as putting a task on you, right? You know what I mean. It means that anyone with admin and you could edit this issue then.
Yeah. Well, if you wouldn't mind closing the issue, I don't think I have triage rights in GitHub though.
Yeah, you wouldn't. Only members have that.
Yeah.
Oh, we're getting a green screen. Which country are you going to? I'm joking. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
So I'm gonna go over these. This will make sense in a minute. Okay.
What is your GitHub?
Castro JO.
It's not what I thought it was. Has created a new issue with the updated process. Please follow, subscribe to. And are we doing both of them or just that first one?
No, the link is right there.
But you gave me a second link as well. So should I also put this one or not?
No, that one's cross-linked from the other one. I wouldn't put that one there. We'll confuse people until I explain it.
Awesome.
Beautiful.
Awesome. And I will put this link at the top of our doc now as well.
Yes. Actually, I'm hoping that this is our most important issue from now on.
That's what I want one issue, but that's the goal. That's the goal.
Exactly. I was like, I'm tired. However, I had to make two issues, and that will be obvious here in a second. Okay. First things first, the security self-assessment. So we went through the process, and the first thing we need to do is complete the security self-assessment. So this was supposed to happen in incubation, and you have an existing thing open. This right here is the current process that we have to do. So we need to grab the previous work that was done and shove it into this, and that will handle the security assessment. So
when you say it should have been done, are we saying that it wasn't done or that we don't have it?
Well, if you go back to the GitHub issue.
Yep.
Tracking issue security review. It was started and in process, and it kind of petered out. It's one of those multi-year things that that kind of happened there, but
okay.
So that needs to happen probably very soon, and the reason is, if you could go back to my main tracking issue, there is part of graduation is getting a third-party audit done by the thing, and that's It takes like a
By who?
contract.
Sorry, who
There's
has
like
to
a
do it?
bidding process, and all that stuff takes time. So, however, you can't start applying for that until you finish the self-assessment. So,
Okay, so who does the third party audit? Sorry.
so what happens is you do the self-assessment, and then you apply for a security audit,
I
and
see.
then that security self-assessment is what they use in order to complete the third-party audit.
And is the
So,
audit more of like a on paper audit or an actual code audit?
no, it's a real audit. It's like by trail of bits. There's like a few vendors that will go in and
Okay.
they will do all well a bunch. They will read your self assessment and use that to kind of guide where they're going to audit.
Okay. Cool.
However, that doesn't need to take place now. What needs to happen is finish so we can start the application process because that's like a third party in it.
So we might need to make a new one. Then does this need to
Right.
go
So
to
I
the
wasn't
talk?
sure if you
Sorry,
wanted a new one
talk.
or not.
Who
So
does
I
this
just
go
kind of
to?
left
Sorry.
it where it was, and we can always swap it out. I have not gone through and figured out what stuff would fit in the new template. So
A lot of stuff has changed in the project since this time, as you might imagine.
right. Yes. And
Also,
the
there is some
process has
stuff that
changed.
was notably missing, though, right? Which is that at the time before Google had donated the project, they wanted to handle all security disclosures, if you know what I mean.
Right.
And so now that we do, we actually have a bit of a confusing problem where people, maintainers of individual components end up because this is another issue, right?
Right.
That just like I might maintain notebooks and people don't necessarily, I don't need to see pipelines disclosures necessarily. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do we have security contacts in every component and all that
See,
stuff?
now
Oh,
this
that's
is
a
something that
different
we would
question.
need to make sure has happened. Because right now, I would
Yeah.
prefer that first off, this is a great question for you, George. One of the big problems that we ran into was what system to use for security disclosures. So, like, there's GitHub itself, right? But that has
Yeah.
the issue of requiring pretty high level permissions on GitHub to see. Then there's the email approach, which is not a good idea. Then there's like a mailing list of some kind. And then
Yeah.
there's like external vendors. So do we have a preference?
That's up to you. I've seen most people just use GitHub security contacts. I can
But the
find out.
problem is that I don't think you can. I mean, I'd have to check, but we would want to scope it, right? Because like
Oh
as
yeah,
I
for
said,
sure. For
like we
sure.
have
Yeah.
so many projects that again, I don't want everyone seeing everything. Like it is
Yeah.
like there are certain
Yeah.
things where everyone should see everything, and then we have the
Yeah.
question of what happens when someone raises it on the wrong
Right.
one,
Right.
right?
So this is the kind of stuff you can put on the self-assessment.
Yes,
Kind of
right.
like where we think we are and what we're doing. Okay. So security assessment that has to be done. That
Yes.
just needs like a volunteer.
Well, I think this is going to take. I think the first thing is deciding if we're going to use GitHub, and then standardizing on that, and then figuring out how to make that work. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. The second part is actually applying for graduation, which is
Yes.
filing an issue in the talk directory. Now, the template, if you scroll down, I made it a separate thing and I pasted the actual template because I know you have the spreadsheet. So you can use the spreadsheet as a working thing, to kind of
Which
keep
spreadsheet are we
track or
talking about here, so
whatever.
just so we can clarify for the audience?
What's that?
Which spreadsheet are we talking about for the audience?
Scroll up. It's linked in the
Criteria?
in the notes. Public checklist graduation.
Oh,
Not these notes, the meeting notes for this one.
I see. Oh, this.
Right. So if you're using this, you can use that. The reason I put that raw text there is that is the text that you will paste into the actual application itself. You can't submit with the Excel spreadsheet, but so use the spreadsheet if you want for tracking or whatever, but then the
I think these might be
actual
out of date now
application.
that we have your changes though as well, right?
Yes, well, it depends on how up to date the spreadsheet is.
I'm gonna guess it's more up to date than not, but it would have been based on what was on the website, which may not have been up to date at the time, as you said.
Okay. Well, worst case, you have the source of truth in that second comment there in GitHub.
And to be clear, when we say source of truth, this is just what you have to put in the actual request, not necessarily what you have to do, right? Or is that but equivalent? Are those two the same?
Yes, what you would do is you would accomplish these,
Oh, I see.
then paste for your thing. What we can't do is take the empty template, file it in the talk repo, and then leave it empty.
What's the minimum? How much has to be done
Well,
before
it's the application, so I would say most of it.
Okay, I'm just checking because
Yeah.
I just want to know like from a talk or whoever is approving perspective
Yeah.
that whether they want to see the progress or whether they just want to have it just bestowed upon them in a couple of months.
No, by the time we get to them, they expect it to be complete. What they don't like is you file an empty thing and then it sits up. What happens is it sits up there for 2 years, and then
Well, that's kind of what happened before. Yeah.
So now they're like, get it in order when you do that. Okay, this is the important bit, and there's a change upstream. If you scroll down, there's a section in here called engineering principles right there. You just passed it. In the template upstream, this is a section that's independent. We've cut that out of this application and instead done the general technical review, which is the second issue. So what the talk is going to do is this GTR is supposed to be in those first steps. However, that change is currently in flight and blah, 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 and they haven't voted. So we cut out the old section of the application and instead inserted this GTR. So the GTR will cover everything that part of the application would. So consider this a sub-application of the application you just linked to.
Does this need to be made first then?
What?
Does this
no, you can actually do them all concurrently. And if you scroll down, a lot of them, like, you have this written down somewhere, do a release in a way that makes sense. They're kind of very.
So some of these things are honestly more like they're definitely true for every single component, but the overall project, I mean, we also do have stuff for that.
Yeah.
But then at the moment, as I'm sure you've seen, we do have a lot of debates around what exactly defines the whole project and things like that, right?
So as I mentioned before, you all,
sure.
Kubeflow, the community, needs to figure out what Kubeflow is.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, like we haven't done that yet. So you need to say what components, you need to figure out if there's like a core and then an ecosystem around it, and you need to define all of those things. I said this to the steering committee.
So quick qualifier there though. Did we get any clarity on whether we're allowed to have like our own incubating projects?
You can do whatever you want.
You know what I mean? Like, because this is the thing where like, we might have projects that we don't know for a fact are going to be in Kubeflow forever. You know what I mean? Like these kind of.
For sure.
And this is where I'm just like trying to
The only thing that talk checks is you can have any structures that you want as long as you're doing what you have written down, right?
Sure.
So if you say a project is incubating if it does these 5 things and it needs like a certain vote or whatever, as long as you're following that process, you can always do whatever you want, right? Like,
does that mean we can have less
projects but not a process?
Because I'm wondering if like our own incubating projects might have less requirements, just like incubating projects in CNCF do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where like that's kind of where I'm like, but then I don't want to let that impact the whole. I'd prefer not to graduate those projects at all with us if they're not going to impact our own ability to graduate. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like this is my question for the talk in other places, because it's kind of like we act a little bit as a sub foundation almost. Yeah.
Like you've been around a long time also, right? Like a lot of this stuff is like, it's been 3 years. There's like, I was looking through some of the issues and people are like trying to figure out what it is. I think you got to rip the Band-Aid off and just say,
so typically we do actually have a lot more solidity since then, but it's more like as new projects have come in that time, some of them are like, some of them are newer and have less, for example, they might have less neutrality in their leadership right now because they're still being maintained by the people who made them, for example.
Sure.
And then
you could say this is the Kubeflow playground.
Exactly.
There could be vendors. There could be disorganized community people. Some are,
obviously, and I'm sure you'll appreciate that
from the other ones. And
we all agree that these are things that need to get sorted. I just think you'll appreciate that. Sometimes writing it down can be harder than
we have to write it down.
Yeah.
We're not, like, I was writing this down and I was thinking about all the stuff we've been doing and I was like, we've been putting this off for so long. Like, we're going to have to sear it into like a GitHub, like on the website, or whatever. And then make kind of statements on what is and what isn't Kubeflow.
I feel like these committee-based ones work to solve some of these problems. We've been making these committees where we have pretty strong, for lack of a better word, constitutional stuff about them, where it's like, what are they allowed and not allowed to do and things like that, which I think will help solve some of these problems where we already have working groups, but their charters haven't been updated in a while. And and so stuff like that is probably one of the vehicles through which we do this, but yes.
Yep. So after that, go back to my tracker
first one.
bug.
Yep. Get that. Yeah.
Scroll up.
Up. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry.
To the top.
I put the application separately so we don't conflate the application there. And then once that's done, we take out the filled out second part of the issue and then we submit that to the CNCF talk. Ideally, as fast as possible.
So my question for you then is, what timelines did they work on? Say we did have everything done, or we thought we
They
did.
check everything in 2 months, and they just checked.
So what that means is that we need to be at least 3 or 4 months before November then.
I I would say you work on as fast as possible on
Like,
this if you
like,
want to
like
get
I'm
this
saying,
done.
I'm thinking like July then. You know what I
I'm
mean?
thinking like as soon as possible.
Well, I know, but I'm saying is like if we're like hard,
Yeah.
let's actually run for this. You know what I mean? Like we do need
Right.
a date from our internal that has buffer in it. So
Yep.
like I'm just thinking, so if we did manage to get it, let's say by the middle of July or something, like make that, and we actually were ready for review, not that we were
Yeah.
token doing it, would that be
Yep.
enough time? For example.
It could be. So
Yeah.
what we're going to do is, with those meetings with the talk, I'm going to have Bob check in every few weeks and be like, "How's it looking?" Because
So
he's
when is that security thing in that process? Is that before or after this?
the security thing is part of the graduation application process, so that would start after.
I
Because
see.
remember, they got to vote to let you in and all that kind of stuff anyway.
Kubeflow is quite a big project. I do worry that that might take a bit of time in itself.
Yes, that's why I'm like, we need to get moving.
Yeah, like what I'm saying is, I think July would be the latest that we could reasonably have started put the application in, right? I don't know what date in July, but it feels like you'd have 4 months then.
Maybe so. Like, I haven't looked back through your back catalog of like how much is left in this. I don't know how much is left in the security self assessment. I know you've done a bunch of it.
Yeah, I mean, we've done a lot of work, but again, I think some of those policies are just around, it's a massive project, right? With so many different people.
Right.
So it's about like just having, there is a couple of technical things that I think are solvable, like if we use GitHub, things like that. Or
Yeah.
if we
What I'm
use another
saying though
vendor.
is like someone needs to take what you have now and start going through the new application and filling out as much as we can and see where we're at. Like, do you know where we're at? Are we 30%? Are we
On the
40%? Or
security one, so
yeah,
has anything changed with the security requirements or not?
I'm. I don't know. I just
Okay, yeah, well, who
run
knows?
the template.
I'm gonna
So
guess that the vast majority of it is mostly fine.
okay.
Stuff like S bombs, okay, we've got some, but yeah.
Yeah.
The rest of it's pretty straightforward. I think the security disclosures. I just want to quickly ask: do we have a relationship with any of the other vendors that we could bring it outside of GitHub? You know what I mean? Like, just because I do worry that like we're gonna need a lot more permissions and stuff than GitHub might be able to provide.
We can figure something
Okay,
out.
yeah,
I
yeah,
wouldn't worry about that now. I would worry about getting someone to commit to fix to start filling out this application and doing this part.
yes. This is obviously something that, yeah, we'll need to work with this. This is
Yeah,
we
yeah,
can,
yeah. And then the last bit is committing it back to the repos. So I got some feedback from the end users and like that general technical review also ends up being when you fill it out. I talked to someone that says this is a really good commercial for your project. So it says, oh, okay, this is very well run. So I got recommendations to check that back into your repo, consider putting it on your website, your own security self-assessment on the website, and it just kind of shows a little bit of
and definitely
transparency.
historical audits as well, assuming we're allowed to make them public. You know,
Are they
are
are
we
they
allowed to
public
make them
already?
public? What I'm saying is, like, what I'm saying is, if we make, because like having regular audits does make sense. You know what I mean for a
Yeah,
project like this, right? So
yeah. Well, you'll get a regular audit. I think when you come in, you get one.
yeah.
You get a fuzzing audit, and after that, I think it's like a 2-year rotation. I'd have to check, but and then that gets put in the landscape next to
I
Kubeflow for
think this is
last
the
time.
real question that I think we keep debating though, which is, are we just a selection of tools? You know what I mean? Is that the thing we're graduating, and that the thing we're auditing, or are we also graduating some reference platform? Like this is the
I am
bigger.
hoping you're graduating Kubeflow, the platform, with a full SDK and all of that good stuff.
But that qualify. But in the same way that Kubernetes is a maybe better described as a reference API than an actual.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and that's and so like this is the question for the project, like, which is
Yeah.
what are we?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have to figure that out very quickly.
I'm imagining that we're at least the tools. The question is, are we also any reference platform? That's the.
Yeah.
I'm not this.
My opinion is yes, you should be. You should.
Well, I would hope, but we'll see. Yeah,
But
it might be quicker. You know what I mean? And other things like
yeah,
that.
yeah. But that's something you all need to come together. Like I was telling the others, I was like, I know we've been meandering on this for years. It's time to just
Yeah, obviously there has to be sustainable. Whatever we do pick, though, in one form or another, it does need to have maintainers that are commercially or otherwise incentivized to continue maintaining whatever the things we are saying are
yeah.
in the project are.
Yeah,
if we don't have that, then what are we, right? So
right. So I know we're missing a lot of people and we don't have quorum, but my idea is like every time we check on this from now on.
so we really only have about a month or 2 months to really get these parts done. Yeah.
Yeah, we got to go.
Yeah. Okay. So is there anything else?
No, this is it. So I don't know what other issues and stuff that you have open, but in order to apply for graduation, this is all that you need. I was like, Bob, give me only these steps we need.
Okay.
The GTR thing we opted into instead of the other things because I was told that it will be more difficult up front, but will make the review easier at the end. It's kind of what the talk wants us to do. So that's what we're going to do.
Okay. And so I
Yeah, a lot
presume,
of this stuff is just writing verbiage.
yes, of course, some of this
Um,
is also a little bit dependent on how we are presenting the project. As I said, like, are we presenting it
yeah,
as
like
a
I
Kubernetes
was
like
like,
standardized
you can't do
API?
a lot of this stuff unless you tell me what Kubeflow is for us.
Well, yeah, it's because I think that, and I think that a lot of people would be willing to just like try and power forward without doing that, but I think there is some danger in, you know what I mean? Like, not like, yeah, yeah.
You have to. What I would say is like, I know everyone's gone this week. Like, try to find some 80 to 90% consensus. I know you're going to argue about the last 10%, but because everybody does, but just enough to get the graduation gears like going,
Yeah.
I think.
I mean, the
And then the
KSC
thing with the
theoretically has
security
final
assessment,
say,
that's just
right? Theoretically, the KSC
hindsight.
has final say, but the working groups would need to agree. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Okay, cool. I'm very thankful for your work here, by the way. This is amazing.
yeah, we got it. It's actually simpler than I thought. They actually deleted a lot of complexity. It's just complex for us because it's moving underneath us. So, but that's
Yep.
fine. We got it.
And so
As
what
long
would
as we stick with Bob.
and so once we become graduated, do you want to talk about what that means or what does that mean?
No, we could talk about that later.
Okay.
No, but what that does mean, you get more resources. You get dedicated maintainer sessions. You get, um, I'm trying to think. Usually, you get priority where your booths are and things like that. There's a whole list of graduated. If you go to contribute.cncf.io, there's a list on that website there
Okay.
somewhere. But the most important part is you get cupcakes
I get cupcakes.
at
We get
KubeCon.
cupcakes.
They
That's
put little
exciting.
Kubeflow logos on it.
Oh, well, that's exciting.
When I eat that cupcake, Matthew, that's when we will be done.
I will make sure you eat that cupcake.
Yeah, go to resources.
Yes.
Yeah, and a lot of it is like marketing. I think you get your quarterly webinar. There's like a bunch of stuff in there. If you project services there, top left.
So I just want to like highlight to people, aside the
Yeah.
fact that why are we doing this? You know what I mean? Like I just want to make sure that people know, you know what I mean? Like, we're doing this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
the
yeah.
way you're doing this is in the CNCF, you're either sandbox, incubating, or graduated. Graduated projects are the ones that kind of get blessed as being production ready. That's where Kubernetes and Prometheus are. And the kind of expectation of the community is projects come in and then they mature enough to get to a point where they're considered production ready, right?
Yes, of course, there is something to be said that Kubeflow has been around for a long time, but yes.
It has. So yeah, something. If anyone else is new, Kubeflow has absolutely been the outlier in all this because it's like
Because we
multiple
joined
projects
as
into
a
one.
donated incubating project, it was kind of, we effectively incubated the whole project outside of Kubeflow, well, the CNCF.
Yeah. So in the past, in the good old days, right, a hyperscaler would announce a surprise at KubeCon, and then they would direct incubate it. We don't do that anymore. It goes sandbox incubate because what ends up happening is you end up taking longer because you're not doing any of the due diligence before, and then you go before the talk and you get dinged on the basic stuff that should have been caught in the previous steps.
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
that security self-assessment.
yeah, I don't know where
Um,
that landed. Yeah, there is something to be said that Kubeflow is one of these very unique projects that has diverse contributors, like with a lot of different, like there's very few projects in the open source world that have this diversity of both commercial
yeah.
and, project interest, but yeah.
Yeah. So that's that. That's graduation in a nutshell.
Cool. And of course, this is something we should want to do because it sends the right message. It proves that we can achieve something, I guess, as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and it gets you the resources and attention that you want, right? Like you don't want to sit around and incubating forever, right? Like for a lot of end users that graduation step is like, "Oh, okay. It's like
especially if the
implied
goal
trust, right?
is to make the tools some kind of standardized API that other vendors can package. It's like this is where that big debate does happen, where it's like, you know,
Right.
if it's like in the same way that Kubernetes has a standardized API that's implemented by a lot of different, you know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
and it's like we can probably be that, but then the question is, do we also have another piece as well? And that's the part that we're
Yeah.
like, yeah.
And you have to figure all that out.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
good news is you don't have to invite me to those meetings.
No, well, you maybe it's good for you, but okay. So
All right, I'm out.
cool, man.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Everyone else got
Questions in
anything?
Slack if anyone has any.
Yeah, so if you okay, we should, yeah. Thanks so much, George. I guess we can figure out next steps. Does anyone want to speak? Josh or anyone else who's here? I guess since we don't really have a lot of the people who could do it. I guess does anyone know what the status of that security thing is? I guess that's the one first thing that we haven't got obvious allocation for. I know that Amber was working on it, but I don't know where he is lately. Okay, well. Mateo, hi.
Yeah, hi, Matthew. No, I was just following the one thing that I also noticed, and actually you spoke to that a little bit earlier, is that there is indeed that same need for as well for the badge for the reporting of the CVEs. My understanding is that, for instance, Julius was proposing to have it on a per repo project, which sounds good with me. The thing is that we will need to make sure that sort of like at least the KSC has overviews for each of the project. I don't know if it's enough just to make it that every KSC member is added to the approvers of the owner's file to see the CV reports in each of the repo. What is saying?
So this is okay. That's a separate issue. So being in the owners file won't give you that. The KSC, because of they probably shouldn't be, but they are super admins on the GitHub org, so they will see them because of that.
Okay.
The I mean that's a separate debate, like whether potentially non-technical KSC members should have access is an interesting question. But the so the security disclosures, as that's kind of what we were saying, right? The question we need to figure out is, can you have security disclosures per repo or is it per org? It's per repo, right? And then
Yeah, the thing that I was proposing in the Slack thread is that I see it like I understand that you don't want the email one, which is fine by me. You can do it per repo, or you can have that each repo points to another repo in Kubeflow, say
like a security repo, yeah.
community, yeah, or things like that, where only the people that are needed to be there are scoped.
I think it makes sense to have a security kind of audit team or something like, triage, maybe triage. Although some of the, like in my experience from the disclosures we've received in past, there's always a lot of work in validating that an issue is actually real and what its actual vulnerability level is. Again, the only people who are really incentivized to make those sort of reviews are actually the commercial products that are built around Kubeflow anyway. You know what I mean? Like individual contributors are less likely to care. So it is hard to make sure that it ends up in the right hands. Also, there is like malicious security disclosure behavior that I've seen in past where people attempt to effectively DDoS the project with security disclosures in an attempt to discredit the project or other things. I've seen that in a lot of projects. So yeah, these are kind of things that wherever we do it. So I guess the two options are there's like a few vendors that we could use to do the disclosures. I don't remember what one of them's called, but then there's also just using GitHub itself. And if we can make GitHub work, that makes sense, I guess. But it might make it harder to do like processes, where you pretty much just get notification someone made a security disclosure, then you have to figure it out, It also then attaches it to the repo as well. Forever.
And but we can have indeed like security.md in each of the repo pointing to say, hey, if you want to disclose a security vulnerability privately, you should go somewhere.
Well,
and
that's what I'm saying. Like that's the thing I'm trying to figure out. With like if we could point them towards the repo, of course, then there's the problem of which repo do we point them towards? Presumably, it's going to be each individual repo. But then, how do we make sure that people are actually monitoring those?
I monitor, for example, I'm monitoring the one for Modern Edge, of course. So
do you have one already set up?
There is basically I can see the tab. So the thing is that of security, so every time that say a CV is reported for a dependency, I can see it here. You are not seeing it, but
No.
what I'm seeing is the security CVs for the third party dependency that the Pendabot then also automatically
But you're not
fixes.
seeing users can't submit a suggestion here, like an issue here. Otherwise, this would show here.
I agree, because there are the two options that we can implement here. Either we implement it per repo, so it means that it lands it within the repo and I will see it, but also say, as you were saying, is like not all maintainers may be interested in, you are sort of like splitting the things in between all of the repos. Or otherwise, we can have just a security policy means that we will have a markdown file that will say, hey, if you want to disclose a vulnerability, you can do it privately somewhere, like in a single repo.
So yeah, because I guess the question for you is that, do you need to have, like, I guess let's just quickly do a search. GitHub security disclosure. That's probably going to come up with their security disclosures, but we'll see. So the question is, are you able to have a level of person who's not write access to the repo, but sees these? You know what I mean? Like, this is, because, yeah, that's the thing I'm trying to figure out.
Okay.
Privately reporting. So you got security, advisory. So who can see them, right? This is, it's like this, I think may only be for people with write access, you know?
Yeah, very possibly, because
Permission levels. Ooh, permission levels. See here?
Yeah.
So like, there's only two, like, this is where I'm like, I don't necessarily want to tie this to that, you know? Like this, it does work. And this is where, like, there is external vendors that the CNCF has had relationships with. And other hyperscalers use them, different vendors as well. And the best part about those ones is that they, first off, probably are free, like for the sense, to use, but also they're not free normally, but it'll be free for us. They can set, we can set reviewers first, and then we can have a triage group who just make sure that they go to the right. And of course, then it's much more clear. I know that means it pulls it outside of GitHub, but I just worry that tying it to this is my concern, like tying it to the permissions and then not having has someone actually followed up, because I don't think this is going to do that in the same loop that the commercial products do. So I don't think we've enabled this anywhere on any of our repos. If you go to security right now, I'm interested, but I don't think we have actually, I think maybe under community, we might have one. But I don't know what it suggests. I think it so right now, I think what it does is it suggests security. Okay, well, there's apparently a folder, weirdly. So they has this team, but it's not really official. So I do think we need to figure this out. But in any case, I'm pretty sure that the solution is going to be using an external vendor. I just don't see any real way to do it otherwise. I guess that's a question now for, I don't want to give anyone free advertising right now, so we can talk about it, but we should reach out to the CNCF to see which vendors they have a relationship with. Because I know that Kubernetes uses Google's one, right? But they use, let's search, Kubernetes security disclosure. Because obviously every vendor also has their own securities for Kubernetes, but that's okay. That's that. Report of vulnerability. HackerOne, yeah. So HackerOne is what I was expecting we would end up using. And it lets people put bounties as well. Like vendors who care about it can put some bounties, which, I'll reach out to the CNCF about getting a HackerOne set up, maybe, so that we can just do the same thing. Or does anyone have any preferences here? Anyone care? Are there any other vendors people want? Preferably that you're not associated to. Let's look at
because the thing that I don't know is this a company that also does it without the bounty program? I think that
yeah, of course. Yeah.
Because as you can see, it's like they have for the Kubernetes, you can disclose it to a mailing list, which understand that we do not want to do.
No. They don't let you do that, do they?
They
Oh,
do.
okay.
It's
They
like
do. They do. I guess we can do this as well, but like what pretty much happens, I think, is they just create one and the other thing, you know? Like they tie it. This is dangerous for many reasons though. You shouldn't do this.
The only thing that I can tell you is that from one of the Linux Foundation courses, they recommend that sort of like you enable the bug bounty program only after a while and not to do it immediately.
Oh yeah,
because
no, definitely. Otherwise you get DDoSed, is what I'm saying. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but
So
anyway, I'm not talking about, so the bug bounty program is separate. Like this also is a tracking system. It's like that's,
yeah,
so what I'm saying is more using it as like, okay, we have each working group, we have a triage group who just checks, you know, is this just spam or is this an issue, and who, and if so, who needs to be assigned to it? And then it pings those people and makes sure that they're aware that this has not been responded to. Because otherwise, normal policy is that if you don't get a response in 90 days, you disclose, right? You know what I mean? Like this is security researcher kind of standard, right? And it tracks those dates and helps you automatically ask for extensions from the disclosure and you know, things like that. So let's just quickly check what Prometheus uses. Security disclosure. Maybe we'll just do Istio. Okay. So yeah, they use a mailing list. I don't know, right? That's because this goes to Google, I think. So has anyone had any experience with these? Obviously, we have a security group, but I don't think they're active right now. So like theoretically, these people should be doing it, but I'm skeptical, right?
Julius was mentioning that he was receiving the CV communication.
Yes. So the reason is because that it's because what people do is that they usually ask in a Slack channel. I don't think there's a specific policy. And I think what happens is I get some of them too, but like where people just like randomly email me. It's not great.
Doesn't sound so great.
It's not, what I'm saying is that's not good. We need a place to keep track of them, make sure that duplicate ones are duplicate. And I don't think that's possible to do in GitHub. That's kind of what I'm getting at. We can just check if there's a security policy in here. Let me check. There's not. Maybe there's one here.
That's
Interesting. I'm not going to show my screen here. Just give me 2 seconds.
Yeah.
I think these are just scans. Yeah, these are just scans. These are not ones that are sent by people. Okay, anyway, I mean, I'll post in the chat and ask about HackerOne. So does anyone have any strong opposing? I guess no one's really here. There's only like 20 people here, but like 10 people here. Open source. Let's just confirm if they have an open source. So I think the CNCF probably will have a relationship already, but
yeah, if we can get like a kind of like a partner, like for example, we're doing for the FOSSA license scanning.
Yeah, and same for and that's another part of the security thing as well, right? We need to do that either way. The scanning is part of the audit as well, I think. But
yeah, what I meant is that there is a license scanning tool that we implemented for some of the repos to comply with the license scanning FOSSA.
So actually, that's a good question. What's the status on that? Do you know, or have you got that?
For modern at times we received a couple of false positives. Sorry, so false negatives. So it was like a third-party dependency that was both released with LGPL and Apache compatible license, but the system allows you to flag when the system is wrongly reported. So we have a constant status update for the modern registry.
These guys use Git. Oh yeah, so they use these two as well. Interesting. So I'm pretty sure what I'll do is I'll just get an account set up in the same way that we have a 1Password and other, you know, things. I'll see what the process is to get an open source one. If anyone has any strong objections, we don't have to use it. It's just like I want to get one set up so that, and then I'll just see if it works, because we need to onboard like a lot of people right into it. I mean, obviously I think that's probably something, but because these, if we just quickly look at the security requirements, like most of them are Yeah, it's I think this is the main part, right? The other stuff is, within each project, make sure that you've got testing and who's allowed to do what. The only thing that we don't have is a place to do an announcement of security vulnerabilities. Like, so that seems to be a requirement here, which is that, Kubernetes, for example, has this, where it's like especially if we're using an external system to track, like, well, maybe that system has a mailing list, I'm not sure, but it would probably be best not to do that. Okay, well.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I'm gonna.
Thank you for sharing about this, because this is a part that, as we are progressing through the badge, sort of like this is, I feel that we need to have a consistent.
We need to solve the whole project, right? For everyone. And then I think so again, so my concern is just that, yeah, like this is not acceptable for security. This ironically causes security problems in our case, like this needing right access.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm only saying it's like happy to sort of like align with what the team, the community here wants to do.
Yeah, maintainers receive reports. Yeah. So yeah, I'll just see if there's any other vendors. I'll do that. Anyway, okay. So other than that, I guess the next steps. Is there anything else that we have before we can close out? So we give people some time.
I have a couple questions.
Yep, please.
So I had reached out to a couple of end users.
Okay.
And requested that they support this effort.
Yes.
I think that we need to break this project into smaller chunks. We need to have a way to make some progress over the next 3 months. Like, what are we trying to get done by the end of June, July, August? And especially for the end users, provide them with some value that they can show back to their managers of the contributions that they're making to the project, how it's going to help their business.
I would really love to see someone like a Red Hat be one of these adopters, because they use the tools in their platform. Because not only are they end users, you know what I mean, but they're platform users too.
Yeah, I'm cool with that too. These are like Capital One and AstraZeneca.
But I'd love to pull at least one of the people who are using the tools in the way that we're trying to make it a standard, kind of like EKS would be for Kubernetes. But in addition to some end users as well, because I just don't want it to be, because we're not making a platform, right? Those users probably do end up using a platform.
In our next meeting, if we could identify what perhaps we want done by the end of June, July, August.
Well, I think the answer is July. At some point in July, I need to figure out a specific date. I don't think there's enough time otherwise. This needs to be all done. Like, literally all of this needs to be done and placed in a Git issue on the talk repo requesting review. Otherwise, there's not enough time to make it before KubeCon. Like, that gives us 1 month of buffer of back and forth with them, and then 3 months to do the security audit and actually have everyone vote.
Yeah, that's gonna be really hard, but
yes. Yeah. But, well, if we want to be able to get up on stage and do a keynote at KubeCon, like, which I think we all do, right? We go.
Well, then I think we're going to have to be more diligent about keeping track of each project's process, and at least they're going to have to report, even if they can't make this meeting. Someone needs to be a representative from each of the working groups to come back and say, where are we at? Where's our blocker? What do we need? And that we need to get that kind of going.
Yep, definitely. So I guess these are the lists of all the tasks now. This technical one is interesting. I think this is probably more of a document, like we need a Google Doc for each sub project and then one for the overall project. I do think we do like there is something to be said about what is graduating, right? That we keep having this discussion, because it makes it a lot easier if we're not graduating a platform. But if we are graduating a platform, we do need to agree what that platform is and where the community support for that is. in any case. I think your answer to your question is pretty clear. If we want to try and make KubeCon, let's aim for that right now. We've still got a couple months, you know.
I guess the point is, I have resources that have said they've wanted to participate. We need to give them specific tasks on specific projects. I assume that most of them are using pipelines. Maybe there's a couple other areas that they're going to want to contribute into. But let's use some of the end users. The end users are going to provide us more KubeCon appeal than the distributions. I love the distributions, but big name end users are going to help us draw more users and more support from the CNCF, in my opinion.
Well, a lot of users end up using a distribution anyway, so some use it directly, some don't. But I think there's value in, like, to the actual CNCF. I think the standardization of tooling for AI on Kubernetes is quite valuable. But end users,
all I'm saying is tactically, we need to get down to what do we want these people who are going to come in and contribute? What do we want them to do? And how can they report that it's value back to their...
Well, the first step, I think, is having anyone who wants to add themselves to these adopters files. We've got one final PR for the notebooks one, but that's the first step for those people, right?
Okay, so you want, if anybody wants to contribute, they
Not
need
contribute,
to
it's a way of contributing.
To join in as part of the adopters, and then what? Are they supposed to go to the working group meetings and put this as a list of items that they're supposed to do? I mean, we need to start to get specific.
So for end users, I think it will be very challenging for them to contribute to for a lot of this beyond the interviews. But for most of this is stuff that we have to do as maintainers. If they want to become maintainers, that is great. I would love more of them. But I think that some of this stuff, except the, user ecosystem review stuff, which absolutely is related, and maybe you can help take that, like lead that section, Josh, if you want. Or not sure.
Okay, I guess I'm just saying this meeting needs to get more project management checklisty.
Well, we actually have a checklist now, so.
Okay, good.
Like this is the thing we need to be working to. And if it looks like we can't make it over the next, month and a bit to get enough progress to actually raise this issue, we just need to go through each of these, like some of these things are already ticks, but like most of these things are ticks actually.
Yeah, also because as I'm skimming through these questions, some of them are also part of each of the answer for each of the badge. And sort of like doing the badge for each of the projects sort of like contributes to each of those points.
Yeah. The only kind of complexity is just agreeing when we present to the talk, what are we presenting Kubeflow as? Are we presenting it as a standard set of tools that can be packaged into a distribution or used by end users? Or are we presenting it as that and something else? I do worry about presenting it as more than that, but that's up for the community to vote on, I guess. But it's because equally we can say we want something, but if no one's there to maintain it, then it's not a thing, right? So like, we have maintainers for notebooks, pipelines, whatever else, but we don't really have that many maintainers for, like a lot of the people who are maintaining it are often vendors or other things like that in their own, and maybe those are fine to be outside of the project. I'm not sure, but who knows? Okay, this is something for the community to debate. I think most of this we've actually got. I think the security is one of the big ones that we don't. Josh, do you have any other comments? Or anyone got anything? We should probably close out. Cool. Okay, guys and people, thank you.